I'm posting this here because I've seen a lot of confessions in this site, and I think it's a good place to let out my own. It has been about 40 years since these events happened, and I don't really care what the government is going to do if I spill the beans. Sure, I signed that non-disclosure agreement and was sworn into secrecy all those decades ago, but I don't give a damn. I am 83 years old and had lived a wonderful life. So, come and get me. I am ready to meet my maker. With that said, I really doubt it that the Pentagon is going to send a kill team to eliminate an old man who can barely walk a few feet without his cane. Now, I could begin from the top when I started my Air Force career, but all of that is just useless detail. I will, however, give you a quick rundown of my life in the Air Force Astronaut Corps before the important events of '79. I joined the top secret unit of the Air Force in 1971, after 8 years of service in the branch. I graduated its training program in 1972 and was sent on my first space mission in 1974, after spending a year and a half doing office work and writing research papers for the Air Force Orbital Warfare Research Team. My flight history is not really impressive compared to other Air Force astronauts, but I guess you wouldn't really know that. It's not like you have the flight manifest of my peers to compare with. My service history prior to 1979 was Blue Gemini 26 in 74, Blue Apollo 6 in 75, Blue Gemini 31 in 76, and Blue Apollo 11 in 78. The Blue Gemini missions were essentially boring orbital peacekeeping missions, with us eyeing our Soviet counterparts while they did the same to us. The Blue Apollo missions, on the other hand, were the exciting ones. These were the missions we astronauts sought after, and I was lucky enough to take part in 2 of them. The idea of building a moon base always had a certain kind of appeal that attracted us. Yes, that's right, a moon base. A moon base in the far side of the moon may sound like science fiction to you, but I can tell you now, back in the 70s we were launching 2 missions a year to make it happen. Too bad, all our hard work went to waste after the incident of '85. But that's not the story I wanted to talk about. No matter how bad the '85 incident was, I wasn't there and I did not experience its horrors firsthand. It's not my story to tell. However, the one I did witness was equally terrible and horrifying. I still wake up with nightmares of it, and it was my inability to cut away from these horrors that ultimately ended my career in the Air Force. You see, in 1978, after finishing Blue Apollo 11, I was assigned to the latest program in the Air Force roster, the Orbital Space Barracks, or OSB. Essentially, the plan was to create an orbital base that would hold 6 personnel, 4 of which will be space-trained Special Forces operators from the Army's Ranger Regiment. These Rangers would be trained to conduct spaceboarding operations and zero-gravity combat in close-quarter environments, with the overall goal of learning how to storm a Soviet space station and secure it within minutes. In an actual operation, we, Air Force astronauts, would operate the base and maneuver it to intercept a targeted space station. Then, depending on the situation, we would either hard dock with it or maneuver close enough for the Rangers to don their spacesuits, conduct a spacewalk, and use their specialized equipment in order to forcibly enter the station. Selected as one out of 2 astronauts to first work in the station, I became the mission's orbital base pilot and was subordinate to Major Howard MacArthur, the mission commander. Joining us were Captain Jonathan Rogers, the Rangers commander, Master Sergeant Gerald Newman, Specialist Adrian Chamberlain, and Specialist Andrew Reynolds. In 1979, all 6 of us lifted off from Midway Launch Base in a Crew X-20 Dinosaur and began our journey to the orbital station, which was nicknamed Phoenix. The base itself was fairly big and was made out of 2 Saturn V third-stage boosters that were docked and welded together. However, after the first week, I wished it was bigger. Despite looking large on the outside, the inside was a different story. A lot of the space was taken up by maneuvering propellant, which took up 40% of the station. That left us with 60% of space left, with 30% of which used for storage, leaving the remaining 30% for habitation. I'm going to tell you now. It wasn't enough. Now, the Air Force did say that they did their studies and it told them that the space left was more than enough for 6 humans to live in for 6 months. However, with the Rangers always training and us Air Force personnel zooming about in order to maintain the station, we often intersected one another and interrupted each other's work. It took us a month before we finally got a schedule that allowed the least amount of interruptions. After the 3rd month, with the standard routine made and inter-service friendships created, life in the station was good. But one day, we got a transmission that would bring us into a mission that we trained for, but never expected to actually do.
Pumish! Pumish!
The call was garbled, but the one word was clear. Having studied Russian, I knew it was a cry for help. As part of our mission, the station regularly monitored Soviet space communications. Because of this, part of my schedule was to spend 3 hours in the communication systems, listening to Soviet chatter. Switching through the various known Soviet frequencies, I recorded everything that I heard before filling them and making use of our latest communication encryption system to transmit the info down to Vandenberg Air Force Base. On that day, I had just switched our radios to tune into 121.75 MHz, a frequency we knew that was used by the Soviet orbital piloted Station 10, often referred to as Almas 10. Stunned by what I heard, I quickly called Howard and gestured him to put on his headset to listen to what I was picking up. Just as he did so, the same cry for help repeated.
Pumish!
The last call was cut off, and after waiting for 10 minutes, no new transmission came. We better contact Vandenberg and inform them about this, was Howard's only remark, and before long, we got a reply from them.
Information received, Phoenix. Continue to monitor the Soviet frequency and update us of any new developments.
So we did, but there was nothing new to report. After an hour with nothing new happening, it ended up that it was Vandenberg that was going to update us.
Phoenix, this is Vandenberg. Do you copy?
Vandenberg, this is Phoenix. We copy. Howard replied.
Phoenix, it seems like we have a request from the Soviet ambassador at Washington, who passed on a message from the Ministry of Defense. Apparently, at exactly 10:21 GMT3, the Soviet Space Forces received a distress call from the Almas 10 space station. This is the same transmission you intercepted. The reason for the distress call is unclear, and they were unable to get any relevant information from the operator's panic cries. At 10:23, all communications from Almas 10 was lost, and the Soviets were unable to get vital signs from any of the 6 member crew or telemetry from the station. Because of this, they fear the worst. Due to the direness of the situation, and because there are no nearby Soviet spacecraft to aid Almas 10, the Soviets are requesting our assistance. They are aware that we have a spacecraft in an orbit close to that of Almas 10, and that's you. Because of that, they are requesting that you rendezvous with the station and conduct a visual inspection. If you can, they want you to dock and assist their cosmonauts in peril.
Damn, I said under my breath. They probably concluded that we have boarding equipment here.
They are also reminding us of the rescue agreement in the Outer Space Treaty, and they trust that we abide by it. And they mean every part of it. They specifically emphasize the part where we rescue their personnel and that we return every part of their space vehicle. We ran this through with the Pentagon, and they agreed that we should assist the Soviets and rescue their cosmonauts. They also informed that no attempt to steal Soviet technology or equipment should be made, or else risk backfire. So, take nothing but pictures. Because of these sudden events, a plan for the operation is currently being drawn up, and we should brief you about it within half an hour. Over.
Roger that, Vandenberg. We are aware of the situation, and we would go into high alert. Over. Howard replied, shaking his head. Risk backfire, huh? He muttered, turning towards me. The ambassador probably hinted that they knew we have nukes in some of our stations up here, and threatened to reveal it to the UN if we don't abide by their request. Well, those nukes are only there because the rats did it first, I had pointed out to him. Which we still failed to confirm, Howard reminded me. Aside from the Soviet transmissions mentioning their nukes in space, we are yet to have physical evidence of them existing. The Soviets, on the other hand, probably have photos of our nukes, especially after our careless installation of them in Freedom Station. They have probably been holding back on this information until the right moment, which seems to be now. I nodded my head. He was probably right, but after a few seconds, I started wondering about the whole situation. It's strange, isn't it? I asked him. What's strange? Howard replied. The Soviets blackmailing us? I think that it's a pretty common occurrence. No, not that, I scoffed. I mean, the request for help. The rats must be really desperate if they're asking us to help them. Howard just shrugged. Maybe, he said. Then again, maybe they just care a lot for the cosmonauts. I just hope that, if something like that happens to us, the Air Force would show the same care in their hearts, which I doubt. With that, he made his leave, floating away to inform the Rangers of the situation. We worked fast, so that within 3 hours after the briefing, we were approaching Almost 10 and preparing to dock with it. Almost 10 was a big station. Do you know Myuu? Well, imagine that, but 2 times bigger. Built as a modular type station, Almost 10 had various sections popping out in all directions, making the whole place look like an orbiting housepipe system. The station also had various docking ports used for a large variety of roles, from crew entry to resupply operations. The docking port connected to the main command module was our targeted entry point. As the station's pilot, it was my job to perform the docking maneuver, which I did from a canopy located near the main docking port. This was a delicate task, and one wrong move could end up with us slamming into Almost 10, which in turn result to damaged equipment, concisions in a large number of hull breaches and leaks in the station's body. Because of this, I had to be very careful. Luckily for everyone, I had spent countless hours in the simulator back on Earth, practicing for this very moment. In addition to that, I had 2 successful life docking actions over the past 3 months. It was safe to say I was no rookie, but there was no excuse for me to be careless, since anything could go wrong during these maneuvers. Carefully controlling the stick with my gloved hand, I leaned a bit forward to conduct a visual check on how close we were. In doing so, I accidentally bumped my helmet on the alumina silicate glass pane of the canopy. I muttered a curse at this, feeling a bit stupid. Working in our spacesuits was hard, especially when you had to do a delicate task as docking. The suits, large, bulky, and cumbersome, was not exactly something you wanted on you when you needed to do fine control movements. However, protocol was protocol, and we had to have them on. When the procedure for docking with the Soviet station was planned out, the authors had it in their minds that we would be facing a hostile target, one that would be firing guns or missiles at us. In that scenario, a single hit would rip a hole in the Phoenix and decompress the air out of the station. If that happened, then it meant death for anyone who wasn't suited up. Thus, it was necessary to have everyone on board wearing their suits. Of course, given the actual situation we had at the time, our target station was not supposed to be hostile. But headquarters feared that the Soviets had an onboard artificial intelligence on their station, which will automatically lock on and engage spacecraft that it did not identify as friendly. With the Soviets having lost telemetry with the station, it was unknown if this system was still active. So, as a precaution, we were required to have our spacesuits on. As we got closer to Almost 10, however, it became evidently clear that the station's defense system was no longer online. Then again, I'm not sure if the station even had an artificial intelligence handling its defenses. Although, I can't be sure. They never really declassified this stuff, you know? Happy with the knowledge that no one was going to shoot at us, I continued my work and got Phoenix's docking port aligned with that of Almost 10. Keeping it aligned and right on target, I brought the docking port closer and closer till the gentle sound of metal bumping echoed along the hall, achieving a soft dock. I then flipped the switch to allow the mechanical clamps to grasp the Soviet station's port. Getting all green lights, I informed Howard that we got a good hard dock and was beginning the pressurization of the hallway that connected the two ports. Once this was done, the Rangers would begin their task of entering Almost 10 and assist the Soviet cosmonauts on the other side. Joining the Ranger team at the hatch of our docking port, I monitored the pressure levels of the hallway as the Rangers prepared themselves and checked their gear. Going through their own intricate set of checklists, they checked and double-checked everything, from suit systems to weapons. Yes, I know what you're thinking. This was supposed to be an aid rescue mission, so why the need for weapons? Why? For safety, of course. It is true that we were here to help the Reds, but help them against what? For all we know, there could be a crazed cosmonaut on the other side, floating around and killing his crewmates because he could not stand another day in the cramp station. That was a possibility, and headquarters knew that. So in order to protect ourselves over such a possibility, the Rangers would go in with weapons armed. In fact, even we astronauts were ordered to carry our guns, just in case we needed to use them. Only when it was confirmed that the situation was safe would we and the Rangers put our safeties on and stow away their weapons.
Hey!
Jonathan said, his voice blaring in my earpiece as he used the local comms network.
You checked your weapon yet?
Turning to him, I noticed he was done going through his checks and was now facing me and gesturing to the holster on my suit's belt. I glanced at him before shaking my head.
Yeah,
I told him.
Just before I went to dock the station. Alright,
he said.
But be sure to check it again. You'll be amazed how many times weapons fail when you need them the most, so it won't hurt checking them as many times possible.
Nodding my thanks, I carefully took out my pistol from its holster and did the necessary checks. The gyrojet pistol was the standard arm of the Air Force astronauts, with the MKI-51 caliber pistol being the one commonly given to us during missions. Firing a rocket-propelled bullet at 1250 FPS, it was essentially the premier firearm used in space. It gave us the same power normal firearms gave, without the annoying recoil. In zero gravity, that means a lot, since recoil can fling a person from one side of the room to the other. The Rangers carried a similar weapon, the MKI gyrojet carbine, which essentially is the same mechanism, but with a stock and better sights. Once all the checks were done, and that hallway was confirmed to be fully pressurized, and without any leaks, Howard came to join us and see the Rangers off. Opening the hatch, Captain Jonathan and his team were just about to float across the hallway, when a loud and eerie bang reverberated from the other end of the Soviet station's hatch.
Did you guys hear that?
Specialist Adrian said. He was at the head of the group, assigned to take point, and was about to hit for the hatch when the knocking started. There it is again. This time, louder, faster. It sounded frantic and desperate.
Shit.
Specialist Andrew cursed.
Those must be the cosmonauts. They must be knocking for help. But why?
Adrian asked. Sergeant Gerald, who had been silently contemplating and listening as the knocking happened, was the next to speak up to voice his opinions.
Maybe they're running out of oxygen in there.
A silence met this statement, as everyone in the room felt a sense of dread fill them. The very idea of running out of oxygen in space would send chills to any spacefarer's bones. To try and breathe, only for nothing to fill your lungs. Thinking it now still makes me choke up. It's a terrible way to go, and the whole ordeal was something like torture. Suddenly, another batch of knocking came, this time even louder and numerous than the earlier ones. Unlike before, however, the banging didn't stop. It continued and continued, no ceasing and only increasing. It started to sound like more than one person was knocking now. Now, at that moment in time, I really believe Gerald's conclusion was right, since it made a lot of sense. A micrometeoroid must have punctured the station's hull and drastically depressurized the cabins. That would explain why the distress call hours earlier was frantic, and why it was suddenly cut off. However, thinking about it decades later, it should have been obvious to me that it didn't make total sense. If they were indeed running out of oxygen, then how come someone was knocking on the hatch right now, many hours after the distress call was made? Sure, maybe some of them managed to don their spacesuits and hold on for a couple of hours. But then, that opens up another question. Why did the station go silent? If a cosmonaut, or a group of them, did indeed manage to survive the station's loss of oxygen, then how come none of them bothered to contact their ground stations? It didn't make sense. But back then, during the moment, that was none of our concern. We were more worried about the lives of those on the other side, and we wanted to save them. Adrenaline and our own fear blinded us. A sense of urgency now filled us, and thinking that the cosmonauts were indeed choking on the final gasps of air, we decided to quickly open the hatch and help them.
Get that hatch open.
Jonathan ordered his team.
Adrian, Gerald, you two get on that hatch and open it. Pull whoever is on the other side and get them some air to breathe. Andrew, you stay with us. You and me are going to cover them, just in case those Ruskies are playing us and do something funny. Move.
I remember thinking how foolish he was for saying that. Cover them. Against what? Of course, I did not bother asking him that right in his face, but it just seemed really unnecessary. I guess you could never get rid of that soldier's instinct. In the end, it turned out his instinct was right. Quickly flinging themselves across the hallway, Adrian and Gerald reoriented themselves so that their boots made contact with that hatch and absorbed their forward momentum. Their impact made a loud thump on the hatch, which seemed to attract the attention of those on the other side as the banging continued to increase. I started feeling uneasy about this. The knocking was very eerie, and having its sound vibrate across the docking port made me feel unnerved. There was just something about it that was scaring me. Maybe my mind was imagining myself in that situation. Maybe it was that thought of someone dying there so close to rescue. I did not know what it was at the time, so I never realized that it was actually my fight or flight senses warning me of the imminent danger. Wasting no time, Adrian immediately grabbed the lever for the hatch and used all his strength to pull down the tight mechanism. Once it opened, however, the sight I saw was not what I expected. What I expected were thankful cosmonauts rushing in and grasping sweet breaths of air. What I saw was the face of terror rushing in to spread its vile darkness. Hollow, empty eye sockets, wide, open mouths that clearly indicated a broken jaw, torn and tattered jumpsuits, rotting flesh that exposed muscles and bone, and a thick black liquid oozing out of every orifice and opening on their bodies. That was what the cosmonauts looked like. That was what was left of the cosmonauts. At first, I thought they were corpses, dead, lifeless corpses. Well, they were indeed dead. Lifeless though? I'm not sure I could say that. The first one lunged through the hatch, just as it was opening and barely 1/3 done. Its hands, or muscles-wrapped skeleton that resembled a hand, darted towards Adrian and quickly caught his leg. There was no saving him, as he was pulled towards this creature, as more hand-like appendages grabbed hold of him and pulled him inside the Soviet station.
What the fuck is that thing? Damn it, get it off of me! Captain, it's pulling me!
Came Adrian's cry on the local comms network. I remember seeing his helmet bump onto the barely open hatch as his screams of panic and cries for help continued to echo in our comms.
Hold on, kid, I got you,
Gerald said as I watched him make a grab for the Ranger. However, the pull by these creatures was too strong and quick, and Adrian disappeared into the darkness of the other side before Gerald could do anything.
Shit, I can't see here,
continued Adrian's calls.
I can't switch on my light. Fuck, it's too dark. I think there are more of them. Shit.
I could tell that Gerald was contemplating on rescuing his teammate. as he seemed like he was orienting himself to slip inside. But before any attempts to go in for a rescue could be done, a lunging hand made him think twice. Surprising him, the hand made a grab for his arm, causing him to react and back away. Following his survival instincts, Gerald used his legs to kick the nearby wall and fling himself towards where we were. Taking his carbine, he then aimed it towards the creature that tried to grab him. By then, the creature was using its hands to scoop up air and swim its way towards Gerald. Bits of flesh and muscle were flung off of it as it did this, as a trail of black liquid marked its path as it moved. Being careful not to hit anything important, since the gyrojet's bullets could easily penetrate the station's hull, Gerald fired 2 shots. Both rocket-powered bullets were true to their mark and hit the creature's forehead. But it did nothing but leave a large gaping hole that revealed brain matter. I stared at this hole and felt fear fill my body. It just survived the .51 caliber bullet to the forehead, something that should not have been possible. These bullets were able to penetrate body armor and spaceship hulls. Yet the creature went on, unfazed by the gaping holes on its forehead. Whatever this thing was, it was not something that mere bullets could stop. But that did not stop us from trying. Watching the creature approach and seeing the danger it posed to Newman, Jonathan immediately ordered Andrew to cover the sergeant's retreat as he lifted his own carbine and opened fire. Taking precise shots, the 2 of them fired and fired, the sound of the rocket-powered bullets whizzing in the hallway echoing throughout the module. Each hit met its mark, taking chunks away from the creature's head. However, it did nothing to stop it. On it went, swimming its way in the air, dead set and getting to Newman. Luckily for the sergeant, the kinetic force of the bullets was enough to slow the creature down, giving him enough time to reach our side. Getting close, Andrew grabbed Newman by the arm and pulled him in. Falling back, the 2 were covered by Jonathan as the officer continued to fire at the creature. Once again, it slowed it down, but it did not stop it. By then, the thing had no more head, with only a disgusting ripped mess left between its shoulders. A trail of flesh, bone, muscles, brain matter, and black liquid floated behind it. A testament to the Ranger's accuracy. Too bad, it did nothing to stop the thing.
Close the hatch,
Jonathan said, as he reversed and tapped me on the shoulder. This brought me back to reality as I realized that my fear had gotten to me and left me frozen. The sight of these horrible creatures and the sound of Adrian's continued struggle in the comms had essentially paralyzed my mind and left me as nothing but a frightened onlooker. Cursing myself for my uselessness, I quickly grabbed the handle of the hatch and pulled on it to close the entrance to the hallway. Pulling the lever, I locked its mechanism, which was confirmed by 4 firm clicks. But just as the hatch locked, the sound of a loud thump echoed from the other side. The creature was there, and it was knocking on our hatch. Mustering all my courage, I placed my head on the small window on the hatch and peered out. What I saw was the creature's tattered neck, black liquid oozing out of the tunnel that was supposed to be the esophagus. Puking it out, the liquid floated freely in the air of the hallway. Staring, I noticed that it was some sort of thick dark vial that looked more like jelly up close. It floated carelessly and without reason, before clumping up together, as if each drop had a mind of its own. The liquid did its best to squirm and make its way towards me, choosing me as a target. The liquid swarmed towards my direction, only stopping when it splattered itself on the alumina silicate material of the window. Backing up, I shook my head and stared at the now covered window.
What the hell?
I sighed under my breath, unable to process what I just saw. However, there was no time to think, as the silence was broken by the sound of Jonathan contacting Adrian through the comms.
Adrian, this is Jonathan. Can you hear me?
There was no reply.
I repeat, Adrian, this is Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Only static replied to him. And for a moment, I thought the Ranger was a goner. What a terrible way to go, to be killed by those creatures. I can only imagine what horrible things they did to him before he finally succumbed to their assaults and died.
Adrian,
the ranger officer repeated.
this is Jonathan. Are you there? Shit!
The whisper-like curse came through the comms, and suddenly hope filled us all. The sound of heavy breathing then followed, as more curses bombarded our comms. We weren't sure what was happening to Adrian there on the other side, but at least we knew that he was still alive.
Fuck, Captain.
He managed to say, still breathing heavily, but sounding much calmer than earlier.
Captain, I need help here. Adrian!
Jonathan shouted, relieved that he had not lost the ranger yet.
Give me a quick sit rep, Ranger. Just hold on there, alright? We'll get you out of there in no time.
Then, floating towards one section of our station's wall, he stared at the stolen almost 10 blueprints we had on board for the Rangers training.
I'm not really sure where I am, sir.
Adrian said, the fear evident in his voice.
I think I might be in the main lab, but I'm not sure. I got lost and disoriented when I tried escaping those things. I'm most alright though, sir. No damage to my suit. Alright, that's good, Adrian. Just hold up in a corner and stay there. We're going in there and getting you out.
As he spoke, Jonathan studied the map. He was probably formulating a quick plan.
Okay, sir, but get here quick.
Adrian said.
I don't know how long I can. Fuck, they're here. Adrian, just stay calm. We'll get to you.
Jonathan told him, before turning towards Howard, who was busy communicating to Vandenberg the events that just transpired. Using a secure comms network used by us officers, he began telling us his concerns.
Howard, we need to rescue the kid. The lab is only 3 modules away from where we are docked. If we go there now, we might just be able to save him before he gets overwhelmed. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I don't think we can do that. I just got off with headquarters, and they're ordering us to undock and get away from here.
Howard replied.
Undock?
Jonathan said with anger.
Are they aware that we have a man left behind there? Yes, Captain. They are quite aware that Specialist Chamberlain is still in there, but they have considered the situation, and they do not believe that one man is worth risking the whole team or this valuable station. One man?
Jonathan hissed.
He is not just one man. He is a ranger. I will never leave a fallen comrade to fall into the hands of the enemy. That's the ranger creed. So, we're going to go in there and rescue him. Do you really think that's a good idea, Captain?
Howard asked.
How about those creatures? How do you plan on dealing with them as you rescue your fellow ranger? Clearly, our bullets don't work. You would know. You shot at them yourself. We'll find a way. We rangers always do.
Jonathan said firmly. As those two were arguing, I could hear the frantic and desperate calls of Jonathan on the other frequency. I knew that the two were hearing the same thing, and I always liked to believe that this brought more urgency to Jonathan's side and guilt to Howard's.
They're all over me! They're all over me, Captain!
Adrian shouted.
I count 5 of them. Fuck, my bullets aren't stopping them at all.
There was a pause, and all I could hear was his heavy breathing.
Shit, my weapon jammed. Fuck, I think one of the bullets is stuck in the chamber. The bullet must have been a dud. Oh shit, oh fuck, they're closing in.
The sounds of a hard struggle could then be heard, as Adrian's cries continued.
They got me. Captain, help, they got me. Where are you? I can't get them off. Fuck. Shit, they're tearing open my suit. They're shredding it to pieces.
By now, Jonathan had given up on arguing with Howard and returned his focus on his stranded ranger.
Adrian, we're on our way. Just hold on.
Jonathan said, ignoring Howard.
Gerald, Andrews, we're going to pick up Adrian. The moment I open this hatch, I want you to shoot up the things that have been banging on our door. You got it?
They both gave a simultaneous
yes, sir,
as they followed their orders. Floating towards the hatch, Jonathan placed his hands on the lever, ready to unlock it. But before he could do it, I made a sudden and quick decision. Knowing what awaited us if that hatch was opened, I did what I thought, and still believe, is right. With one flip of the switch, the clamps holding Phoenix with Alma's 10 immediately let go as I pulled on the stick to push our station away. A whooshing sound could then be heard on the other side of the hatch, as the pressurized section was suddenly forced to vent out the air. Then, there was silence. The steady thud that reverberated from the hatch had stopped.
What have you done?
Jonathan asked me, a rage more intense than anything I had seen before or would ever see again, ringing in his voice.
I don't know. We would have died. The creature was still on the other side, and we wouldn't have been able to stop it.
I tried to stammer the right words, but I could not. I knew that I saved our lives by doing that. But I also knew that I may have condemned someone to their death, or a fate worse than death. Jonathan stared at me and seemed ready to kill me. If it weren't for the sound of Adrian's voice interrupting the anger he was feeling.
Captain, what just happened?
He asked.
One moment, those things were all over me, and the next thing I know, they were being sucked out of the module we were in. I would have been forced out too, if I didn't grab onto one of the handles just in time. Adrian!
Jonathan called, relief in his voice. To be honest, I was relieved too. He was alive. I didn't kill a man.
What's your situation? Are you alright? I could be better, sir, but I'm mostly okay. I managed to patch up the tear they made with some duct tape, and suit pressure is starting to normalize. It's a good thing they made these things a standard issue.
Adrian said with a chuckle.
Anyway, sir, when are you guys going to pick up? Fuck! Oh, Adrian, what's wrong? There's something in my suit, sir. Oh shit, I can feel it inside my suit. Some kind of slimy goo. Oh fuck. I don't know what it's doing, but I can feel it move inside. Shit.
Jonathan cursed, turning towards me.
Dock this station back to Alma's.
I stared at him. There was no way I was going to do that. I realized what Adrian was talking about. It was the black liquid. I did not know much about the black liquid, and I still don't know much about it. But what I did know was that it was alive and deadly.
I can't do that,
I simply told him, trying to hide the guilt I was feeling. It was then I realized that I didn't save Adrian from death after all.
That black liquid is clearly still in that station, and we're risking infecting ourselves if we go back there.
I felt cold and heartless saying that. And yes, the guilt got to me, but I was trying to keep us all alive.
Damn it!
Jonathan cursed.
It's trying to get into me,
cried out Adrian.
Fuck, I feel it slipping in. Captain, it's going in everywhere. Shit, some of it is crawling up my neck. Fuck, I can see it now. It's moving to my mouth. It's moving.
Gagging sounds then filled the comms as Adrian struggled to breathe. I can only imagine how terrible the experience was for him. Just then, Jonathan did something I did not expect. He raised his carbine and pointed it at me.
Dock this station now, or I will blow your head off. Whoa,
I said, shocked and frightened.
Okay, Captain, let's try to calm down. Think about what you're doing. No,
he said firmly.
There won't be anything calm until we have Adrian back on board. So, dock this station now. Captain, you'll be arrested if you don't stop now.
I reminded him.
I'll be arrested when we get back to Earth, but at least I saved one of my men. So, dock us now.
Staring at him, before glancing at his carbine, I knew that I had no other choice. Reluctantly, I turned towards my console. I felt angry though. This man was going to get us all killed, and he didn't realize it. In the background, the sound of Adrian struggling could still be heard.
Dock us quickly, we don't have time to spare,
he told me before changing frequencies to talk to Adrian.
Just hang on in there, kid, we'll be there.
Whatever he had to say was cut off by the sound of 3 spurts of rockets firing. Confused, I turned towards him only to move back in surprise. His helmet was covered in blood, and there was a hole right through his visor. I cursed before noticing that Gerald and Andrew were in a similar situation, helmet visors covered in blood. Right in front of me were 3 floating dead bodies, and behind them was Howard. gun drawn and face expressionless. In the urgency of the situation, he had slipped behind them and resorted to the quickest method of dealing with a mutiny.
Damn idiots,
he muttered.
Should have just listened to me and followed orders. This is going to be one hell of a mission report we'll have to file later. Did you really have to shoot Gerald and Andrew too?
I asked. Howard shrugged.
It was necessary. They would have retaliated so that they could avenge Jonathan and save Adrian. He should have just followed orders instead of throwing a tantrum. Then maybe he would still be alive instead of dying a disgraceful death.
I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I just stared, while in the background the muffled voice of Adrian still blared in the comms network.
Captain, are you there?
He said, but there was no reply. Jonathan and his team were dead, and Howard had no plans of talking to the man he planned on leaving behind.
Captain, I don't know what happened, but I feel strange. I don't feel alright. I feel hungry.
The next couple of minutes was then filled with the sound of Adrian growling, before being cut off by the sound of rushing air. My assumption is that he took off his helmet. Why he did that, I don't know, and I don't ever plan on knowing. We spent the next hour cleaning up the mess and debriefing Vandenberg of the situation. As we did so, I could still see the eerie sight of Almost 10 through the various canopies, and I swear that I saw some of those creatures floating and drifting in space. Once everything was clear and all the information we needed was gathered, we were ordered to conduct an orbital maneuver to a lower parking orbit. The Soviets, we were told, had been informed of what had happened and would be taking over recovery operations. Why they wanted to recover the station, I didn't know, but I was glad that we were finally getting away from it. The next day, we were ordered back to Earth, and the moment we landed at Vandenberg, we were immediately quarantined and interrogated for every bit of information we knew. We cooperated, of course, and after 2 weeks, we were cleared off. After such an intense encounter, it was decided that we should remain grounded for a couple of months. To be honest, I was glad for this. For 13 months, I was assigned to light duty, conducting research and paperwork. I never saw Howard again after that, but I heard he was immediately sent back up after 3 months of rest. After my time of light duty, I was ordered to have a psych evaluation. Apparently, they needed a good pilot for a planned 1980 mission to Mars. But after my experience the last time I went up there, it's no shock to say that I failed. I was still too traumatized, and they concluded that a 6-month voyage in a spaceship was no place for a man like me. Sake of research duty and no future prospects of going up, not that I would have wanted to, I finally decided to quit the Air Force. The next few years were tough, but I did my best to hide my fears and guilt from my friends and family. Nightmares always plagued me, and regret would suddenly hit me at unexpected times. The events of 1979 at Almost 10 would never leave my memory. I know that I will continuously be plagued by terror brought on by its horrors and the regret I feel because of my decisions. However, I do hope that, by writing this, the weight I feel would be lessened. To Adrian, if you're still up there, I'm sorry for leaving you behind.